For more information on my programs, please visit masajady.com. That's MASSAJADY.com.
Hello, this is Masati. Welcome to my podcast, Exponential Intelligence. Today's episode is going to be on action versus neutrality, what that means, what we should do, what we should not do. And it comes on the heels of me making a public statement about that mentally unstable woman that has attacked me for years, and then the deeper meaning, the spiritual meaning on why that happens, what it's about, when to take action. And it really started, or this realization came to me, and that's why I created this podcast for it, because many of us, are, say, sucked up in this paradigm that this quote says it all. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. It was either Edmund Burke or John Stuart Mill. Now there's a controversy on who said it, whose quote it is. And at the conscious level or the physical level that we're at, it doesn't really matter. But as we go to higher and higher frequencies, those little details, by the way, would matter. Okay? And that's really part of the thesis that I'm going to be talking about in this podcast. What we're going to do is debunk the theory on doing nothing is misguided, and we've all heard of that, or what some people go, well, the virtue of neutrality, right? Where we look the other eye, we go to higher grounds and we do nothing, we look away, we don't get involved. And why that's, to say, a detriment, or has been a detriment to society. Why we turn the other cheek, right? All those sayings, right? And then even worse, it's like, well, they've had, bad childhood. They've been tormented, so we should love them, or say, send love frequencies to those individuals. Those, again, we're going to go through all those phases, and we're going to debunk each one and why it's detrimental, and thus the state of, say, human consciousness. Okay? So, there's a lot of deeper understandings on spiritual beliefs of neutrality that we don't understand, but we just do blindly. When to act, when to not to act. And even in power versus force, the God view of neutrality, it would be enabling. So what's the definition, or why would the God view of neutrality be enabling? And then last and foremost, why I finally took action. And then as a result, the adult bullying series that we've started to design to neutralize situations, negative situations in our lives that distort us, misguide us, pull us away from our natural intent, or drag us down. Okay? So, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Okay, the reason why that's really a lot of BS is that, and the spiritual version, again, like I said, is to turn the cheek and so on like that. We take away the spiritual version, or the notion that, we're going to go on higher grounds and it's better for us, okay? But at a deeper level, what that really means, and this became so clear to me, is that, if you combat evil versus evil, like a lot of countries do here, right? What do? A country is evil, and then we're going to fight against that country to combat it and squelch evil. Well, what happens is the same thing. Evil still progresses. Evil still wins in that situation. I was reading a story, the Einstein prophecy, where Einstein gets taken over by this evil spirit, and in towards the end, I don't want to ruin the whole story, but it's an amazing story, by the way. Again, it's called the Einstein prophecy. Einstein goes, oh, so because he had doubt. It's like, well, if the good guys don't invent the atom bomb, then the bad guys will, and then evil will reign. So I might as well invent it first, right, for the good guys. And the evil entity that had almost possessed Einstein said, well, it doesn't matter which side has the atom bomb. Our purpose has begun. Our purpose is fulfilled. It really impacted me because it's in the same scenario. It doesn't matter what you do or not you do. The purpose of evil or the purpose of control has begun. It doesn't matter what you do or don't do, and that's the key, and that's what most people get sucked into, that trap. They think it's a spiritual enlightenment practice not to do anything and stay neutral. But for the most part, most people, when they force themselves to stay neutral, it's not the consciousness, it's not what you're doing that's affecting it. Just like anything else, it's not what you're doing, it's not how you're going on a date, how you're creating a business, how you're making money, how you're making love, or anything that matters in this physical realm. Anything that happens in this physical realm, it does not matter. It's the existence or the totality of your consciousness on why you're doing what you're doing in this reality. Nobody seems to understand that. Nobody seems to understand why people want to become successful. Nobody seems to understand why the deeper reasons or the deeper mythology of your spirit wanting to, say, do nothing. And in a lot of cases, unfortunately, the idea or a concept that we've turned into, say, a spiritual enlightenment or a spiritual endeavor where we don't do nothing comes from a state of being abused or distorted or controlled at a spirit level. If you look at those individuals who take the higher road, and again, I've worked on tens of thousands, maybe more, throughout my career, helping people transform. Every time that I've seen this pattern where people take the higher road and do nothing, those individuals have been, say, abused, distorted, controlled. They don't know anything else to do. They've given up because they're weak inside. And it's not that they're weak inside, like physically weak, although that's what they see, that's what they portray. It's because that they're weak at a spirit level. They've been conditioned so drastically, lifetime and lifetime again, that, well, it's just like that elephant that gets raised, when they're elephants, when they're baby elephants, they have this huge chain around their legs, and they can't walk away. They're chained to this huge post, right? Otherwise, they could easily, pull that out, and then over time they understand, right? They get conditioned that they can't break away. So as they grow into adulthood, what happens is that they have this little stick that could be easily pulled away with this tiny rope that could be easily broken. But as soon as that elephant feels that tug on their leg, they stop. It's the same objective. We've been trained so deeply in our psyche. We've been trained in our culture, in our family structure, lifetime after lifetime, generation after generation after generation, just to hold that in or be controlled or abused. And then we've turned it into, because we can't do anything else about it, right? What do you do when you can't do anything else about it? You just take it, and taking it honorably, right? That's the same thing here. We take it honorably. It doesn't work. It just does not work. Okay? And for the most part, like I said, we act upon being neutral, just like being politically correct, right? We're so inundated by being politically correct. But on the inside, what do? We're still thinking the same damn thoughts about, that black person or that Chinese person. And again, I'm just naming out. I'm not against. I'm very neutral, and I'll explain what neutral means to me, the EI process, rather than what neutral means to most people. But we hold that grudge, we hold that hatred, the abuse patterns, the venomous, say, acts towards those individuals. Still, although we act outwardly as a neutral state, it doesn't work that way. It's your internal value structure that happens, that causes, say, movement in the human consciousness. It's all about human consciousness. It's not your actions. And I say this again, it's not your actions that causes, say, that change in human consciousness, or that elevates you into another higher consciousness. It's the thought process behind, and this is where humanity gets stuck. It's been recycling the same damn thing over and over and over and over again. Where good men do nothing, because it's the high road, and then what happens at a conscious level? Not a damn thing. We recycle it. So overall, we're getting abused over and over and over. And still, we start to take that abuse even more, because then, well, we don't do nothing because we're good men, we're good people. It doesn't work that way. So in short, what this is about, and this is that enlightening factor. When I read this, it's like, holy shit, it's not about doing nothing. It's about doing nothing, or it's about doing the same thing. Or let me put it clearly. It's about not doing the same thing that your attacker or abuser is doing. That's a spiritual value. That's where that value comes from. It's not about doing nothing. It's a huge, say, awakening or epiphany if you think about it. Again, when I go back and go, well, this one country is invading the other country, right? They fight to create neutrality or peace in that country. If you look back in history, whether it's religious values, political systems, your marital affairs, whatever it might be, right? When you're fighting to bring in peace, does peace ever come? It never does. And this is the reason why. Because you're trying to solve the problem. You're trying to overcome the problem with the problem. By the way, as a side note, the interest rate on the debt that America owes can never be paid, because you're paying money from the money that's been created. Does that make sense? You can never repay that interest back. That's why everything gets more expensive, but that's another podcast in the future coming up. But coming back to this situation, that's why nothing ever works out, and that's why good men or intelligent men go, well, we don't do nothing. Because at the level of consciousness, if you're fighting that level of consciousness at the same level, it's a good strategy to do nothing. Because evil begets evil. So, and that's why for a long time, for me, it took me, 2 years. This crazy woman has been attacking me for 2 years. Again, we took the high road, didn't say anything. And again, most people will go, you're right, don't do anything. You're not going to give it energy. You're not going to give it force. But this woman, she breeds on that. Just like the evil, the distortions of control that breed upon you at a human consciousness level, that breed upon all of us. This consciousness of control that breeds and multiplies, just like a virus, when you don't do anything. So what do you do then? And that's where it's time for us to say, stand up, do something different. And that difference came to me, is that, well, what's the solution then? So the solution that we came up with is that we start to break down the patterns and start to awaken people on how, say, abuse or control, or in this case, adult bullying happens, right? We start to break down, say, the mechanics, the details on how adult bullying happens, whether it's in religious systems, whether it's in business systems, relationships, political systems, country to country, or in this case, bullying. Did you know that over 40% of the people on social media get bullied? So why does that have to happen? We're not going to get into the logistics. That's in the bullying series. But what are the solutions? What do we do? What we did is we rose above the problem. We're not solving the problem at the level that the problem has been created. We're not fighting evil at the level of where the evil is. Okay, whether it's in physical form, like this woman, or at a say etheric level, right? Another presence. You can't get rid of that consciousness fighting it. In fact, as you know, the more you fight it, the more you get entangled in it, the more you get tarnished in it, the more you get damaged from it. And again, in that scenario, the quote exists with purity and it works. But to completely eliminate it so it doesn't spread like wildfire like it has, and it's literally controlling the consciousness of humanity. Okay? Hitler might have been gone a long time ago. His consciousness still exists within us. That consciousness did not die off. The consciousness, the same consciousness that this unstable woman attacks me, is the identical pattern of the consciousness of Hitler. So clearly, against some of the strategies that she uses, but if you look at some of the strategies that other bullies use, it's the same consciousness, just at different levels. So we have to rise above that level, again, by starting to understand the mechanics, and then once we start to understand the mechanics on why, say, people or consciousness exist, or why realities, the deeper realities exist, just like many of you in your life, if you've seen it, right? As you've worked with me through the 21 days or the podcast or anything like that, there's an enlightening factor. It's like that aha moment that comes through. And you go, holy shit, that's why that happened to me. And then as soon as you start to realize the mechanics, or maybe the truth, and we'll explain the details on how you realize the mechanics so we can do it even faster. What happens? That consciousness does not control you anymore. It just literally falls apart. It just disappears. So in that instance, yes, physically we don't do nothing. However, we've risen ourselves to a higher frequency above the consciousness that we're at, where that evil can, say, destroy us. So it's not about doing nothing. It's not about being neutral. It's about rising to a higher level and freeing yourself. Because whatever level of frequency that you, say, entertain or live in is where you'll be at. You'll get affected by whatever is at that level. But now we raise ourselves to a much, much, much grander level. And one, that existence cannot thrive on us. It cannot feed on us when we don't do nothing. It just can't. It can't latch onto us, like many of you found out. People who have been like sucking the life out of you, they can't anymore. Why does that happen? Because you've risen yourself to a higher frequency. Simple as that. You did a lot. Doesn't mean that you did nothing, but you took that effort to rise to a higher level. I've taken that effort to rise to a higher level. And now, again, so that public statement, unlike other public statements, but in the most part, most public statements that people make when people get defamed, right, is that, hey, I am innocent and this is the reason why X, Y, and Z. In fact, we were going to release a podcast on all the atrocities that this crazy woman has talked about, and go, no, this isn't true, this isn't true, this isn't true. But then that goes into the same frequency. So although I tried to get to do it, some of the lawyers said to do it, I just couldn't get to do it. It just couldn't work for me, and now I understand the reason why. So follow that instinct that's awakening in you, by the way. And then the real solution came when it was time. Like, well, hey, we'll rise above it, and now the public statement is an anchoring that, yes, I've risen above it. And to all those that have written up, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and we keep getting more and more support, so thank you. So that's your, say, concept. That is your awakening. That is, say, that call to victory, to justice, that I've blown that whistle for, and many of you, and a ton of you are coming up. It's like, yes, finally someone is doing something about, say, this bullying. So I applaud to all those individuals who, and many more that are coming forward, we're actually doing it the proper way. So standing still, there's no regret, there should be no remorse, there should be no guilt on that. Okay? And I'll tell you a story that's very touching on a woman that I worked on. So once you rise above, like I said, okay, and then you start to notice the mechanics on how those filters work. That evil has no clutch upon you. And not only erodes that evil connection with you, but like for many of you, when I decided to make that statement, and then many of you wrote in, did you notice that you freed yourself of that bond, that bond of tyranny that you yourself was bound by? I was just a reflection of my distortions, and you were a reflection of your distortions. But once we again can disconnect it as a group, notice how freeing that is. It's not just about us either. This is a ripple effect. This is how evolution really happens. When we free ourselves, and there's going to be thousands and thousands more, especially with the bully series coming up, as our cause or our mission of high performance consciousness comes about, it's amazing how many people have, say, been attracted towards us because they start to see the light. Like before, it's like we didn't do nothing because we didn't know what to do. Now it's like we've got a direction. And that direction is not fighting back the old way. It's not. It's got nothing to do with that, right? It's about, say, standing strong and complete and calling out what needs to be called out. It's totally different. This is where we can't get controlled. At a personal level, say your spouse, your kids, your dog, whatever that controls you. And then all the way up to your employees or your employers. The justice system, the law, the government system, the financial system, the religious systems. You start to push back on those, say, religious systems that have gotten out of hand. Many people think that I'm against religion. No, I'm not. I'm far from it. But I urge you to push back, like you will now, in its proper form. Okay? You're going to start to push back and start to ask questions on why the religious system, say, doesn't work the way it should. If you're not getting the same results as a Jesus, a Buddha, or Muhammad, or whatever you believe in, then it's wrong. And it's not your fault. Again, I'm not against these religions. I'm against the way the words of those great individuals got distorted. So you're going to stand up. You're not going to take, say, the garbage that's been given to you in any form. And you're not going to fight. That's the amazing thing about this. Like many of you, have you noticed, like, say, in your, say, spousal arguments and so on, do you notice that you've risen to a higher level? Do you notice that you don't have to fight? You don't have to argue to keep your respect? They just respect you. They might hate you for it, but they do respect you. They have to find another way. They have to change to hang out with you. That's real, say, justice. That's real strength. And the more they push on you, the stronger that you get. Isn't that amazing? All the while, how much time, how many centuries have we spent trying to be in a peaceful state, a peaceful nation? Hasn't worked. It's gotten worse. We've just gotten better tools to kill ourselves and to command peace. Again, it doesn't work. But look at this new method. We awaken to a higher consciousness. It takes work because we've been enveloped in it. We've been compressed for so long. But now, right, we've broken free from that, from those shackles. And now nobody can bond us. Nobody can destroy us. That consciousness, say a Hitler consciousness, there's other frequencies, but again, let's just group it in and label it as a Hitler consciousness. That can exist. That can exist no more. In fact, I tapped into Hitler once, and said, you know what? You know, many people hate me, but if it wasn't for me, it'd be somebody else. And then what he said, you know, even after I died, that consciousness still exists. Look at the way people control people. Look at the way people abuse people. So you're just doing it in an ulterior faction that nobody knows about. So think about that. And then he said, you know, you should actually thank me for bringing it out in the open to see it so grotesquely. But unfortunately, nobody woke up from it. So is the shame upon me, or is the shame upon, say, the humanity that didn't wake up from that heinous situation? Which brings me to a beautiful story, by the way. So you think about that. Why we didn't wake up. Brings me to a beautiful story. This woman, she asked me in a private industrial group healing, the IGHs, she asked me, it's like, Moss, you know, was I in Jesus' time where was I the woman that gave water to Jesus before he got nailed to the cross? Somebody had told her that. And then I said, no. No, you weren't. However, you were in that procession line watching Jesus be nailed to the cross. You were a young child, a young boy, and you were looking around, and you were looking at the masses of people that had followed Jesus to get to watch and to hang, or not to hang, but to get crucified in that respect. And you were looking around with tears in your eyes, and you were wondering of your adults that you follow, model citizens, right? That would do almost anything for Jesus or for his mission. And you were looking around, there's hundreds and hundreds of people, and you're going, why aren't they doing anything about this? And that's what was kept her life from progressing forward, because she was still in that guilt. So if you go back in time, that guilt of not doing nothing literally originates, I wouldn't say completely originates from that, but it's a progression on us standing still, knowing that we should do something, say as a child, right? We should do something, but then we get frozen not to do it. For some reason. What is that reason? It's that consciousness that says no, don't, so we can infiltrate you even more. It's that time when fear comes in so strongly that you're going to get abused. It's like a deer in a headlight. It's been written so deeply in us, ingrained so deeply in us, that basically it says when you get abused, distorted, controlled, you do nothing. So that saying, do nothing, that's where it originates. That's the original frequency that comes through. So in her scenario, the woman, because I read the woman, I said, well, thank God you weren't that woman that gave Jesus the last cup of water. And by the way, I don't believe he died on the cross, but that's something else as well. But that woman that gave him that last drink, I tapped into her and I actually freed her for that distress of watching, say, your Savior, right, be on the cross, and you can't do anything about it. You know, when you see something so tragic and you see it and you can't do anything about it, especially, say, as a kid, right, although she was a woman, what do? You go into this mental disarray, this mental anguish, and you can't get out of it. It's in that muscle memory. That woman that, say, gave Jesus that last cup of water stayed in that space of disillusionment, say, that terror of watching, again, the Savior. She never got out of it until the moment that this lady came about. Maybe that's why the IGH was there, to free her from that space. She stayed in that timeless moment. And that happened a long time ago. Over 2,000 years ago, right? It's a timeless space. So freeing her from that space allows, again, the reason why I say this is that it allows you to free. It allows you to free you from that frozen state of doing nothing, where, say, abuse, where distortions, control will start to enhance you, will start to motivate you to go forward. And that's what this mission, that's what this public statement is about, to help you out. What we're going to do is we're going to do a lot of free calls to go into the mechanics so we understand. And by the way, it's not just about people who get hated on or bullied. It's about the other side. People who are controlled by this consciousness to bully. So it's for the both sides, because we need to help those people who are, say, under control of this consciousness, right? Rather than just protecting people, we're going to eliminate that consciousness. Again, this isn't about protection. This is about elimination. So this hater series coming up. If you have any comments, questions, or stories that you'd like to share, or even if you want to get, say, interviewed on how you've bullied and how we can do, we can do the mechanics on how bullies work, or getting bullied work, or why you bully. We will take your story apart, see the mechanics, so we get to go, oh, that's why it happens, so it never happens again. Because, once the truth comes forward, it's pretty hard to go back and get controlled by the lies, right? So as we end, let's just take about 5 minutes. And I know I haven't done this in a long time. Close off with a meta healing, but I'd like to come back to it. Many people got a lot of benefit, especially from this one. Let's take a deep breath in. Just notice where you are. Notice the space. If you're new, just doesn't matter. If you're new, just notice how you're sitting, standing, lying down, whatever is providing you that support, a bed, a chair, the floor, whatever it might be. And then take a deep breath in, connecting with the Mastermind. And it's a strong mastermind, especially the last few days, last few weeks. We're all coming together. Uniting as one, not to lose our identities, but take confidence to be our complete, unique self, because we have support, proper support. And then a strong breath in again. Asking ourselves, how do I connect to pure source even stronger? Again, that question, if you've never heard it before, how do I connect to pure source even stronger? By the way, it's not nothing outside of you. It's that internal purity that you have. So if you want to ask it another way, it's nothing religious or spiritual. You're asking yourself, how do I connect to my purest potential stronger? This is where we become a gladiator. And again, it's not about knocking down your foe. It's not about destroying things. It's about standing so strong. And it's about standing for the right to stand strong, to be independent, without any control. It's about sustaining yourself. Not destroying others, to sustain yourself. So does it help you embrace the strength that you are? Embrace the confidence to stand and consciously, spiritually, etherically do something thus allowing your physical actions to take that human consciousness in another direction. Noticing your spine as we take a deep breath in, that strength in your backbone comes in. And standing strong, standing tall. And helping you imbue the frequencies, the strength of your awakened spirit. I want to ask you something. As you notice the expansion of your chest, that confidence, your shoulders, that look in your eye, would your spirit, your awakened spirit, take any shit from anybody? Again, it's not about fighting back the conventional way. It's about honoring yourself at such a high level that you don't even allow that consciousness to exist where that question can even come up. Strong, confident breath in, again, strengthening the spine, standing strong. As you stay in this space, it prompts a couple things that I didn't deliver, so just talk about it now as you stay in this space, as you notice your natural instincts to be your best possible self. Basically, your ego in its proper state. EI, ego, exponential intelligence, definition of ego. The Jesus story that I talked about. In that session, and again it was a most amazing session, whenever you have, say, the frequency of the man Jesus come through, you literally have to bow. Let's see if I can bring that in, by the way, as I talk about that consciousness that came in. Just take a deep breath in. And again, it's not the religion. Far from it. It's the purity of a single man. As a note, this does not degrade the consciousness of a Buddha, a Muhammad, or Abraham, or Moses, or any of those. It's the same thread. It's the same vein. It's the same consciousness. To finish off that story, that consciousness of Jesus came through as I was explaining, say, that guilt that was built within this woman and everybody else who, say, witnessed that experience. And again, just think, that guilt is so deeply ingrained in us. It's embedded. It literally has changed the DNA structure. Say, there's thousands of people that experience that situation, so deep of a tragedy. Those people propagate, have kids. That distortion is embedded within every DNA. It's like you get your hair color, eye color. You get that guilt as well. But what that consciousness said to me was that there should be no guilt for what you did not do. It is not your place. Although we carry that burden upon our backs. By the way, that guilt wasn't Jesus' mission. It was that consciousness way before that found a path to control. So as we take a deep breath in and go deeper, just keep that consciousness of Jesus, no matter what religion or non-religion or atheist you are. It doesn't matter. You can always learn from a fantastic, beautiful man, right, with a high level intelligence. In the book Power versus Force, the godly view of neutrality is enabling. Again, enabling a negative, say, connotation, right? Where you're an enabler, you allow other people to control you, or you're enabling, say, incongruent behaviors in your kids or whoever. So the reason why it's at that level in Power versus Force, and the authors might not even know it, is that neutrality in this case is not about not doing anything, not taking the high road. Neutrality is not having any judgment on what you experience. So you see somebody like a beggar on the street, and you just see a beggar on the street. There's no judgment. He's poor. It's a state of society. Somebody should do something about it. He might rob us. All those things. You see it as it is. It's like you'd see a red flower. You might see its beauty. So you might see the beauty in that beggar. But when you have no judgment, it allows you to be free, and then it allows you to expand beyond the limited possibilities of your consciousness. Because judgment literally is a filter on what you hold to be true or not true, or whatever that you're judging. So when there's no judgment, or neutral in this definition, just imagine all the other possibilities that you don't even know about come into your life, like many of you have experienced. That's because you're in that neutral state. That's that godly view, as the book Power versus Force puts it. I know a lot of you love this space. It's a nurturing, loving space. By the way, that Jesus frequency is very different than what you see in church, or any other religion, or any other idea of love. So note it, acknowledge it, feel it, live it. I'm going to go ahead and keep you in this space. And as always, as we end, notice what you notice, and then really start noticing the details of what and why you're noticing what you are.
For more information on my programs, please visit masajadi.com. That's MASSAJADY.com.